Are you tired of being cooped up all day watching the press work themselves into a tizzy? Just need to take it out on somebody? Well, in this mad musings, why not turn yourself into a genetically engineered killing machine and rack up a body count that Doom Guy would get envious of? I'm looking at the third of the Fantasy Flight 40k games, Deathwatch. So bless your bolter and set your chainsword to mulch. I'm Mr. Welch, and it's time to honor the chapter. Deathwatch, without question, is the high end of the 40k power scale when it comes to dealing with the RPGs. First level Deathwatch characters are as powerful as maximum level Dark Heresy characters. Short of heavy weapons and lucky hits, a single Space Marine is going to wipe the floor with any party from any of the other 40k RPGs. Playing Deathwatch is like putting Doom on God mode and wiping the floor with every demon in hell. Might not make great role-playing, but it does make for fantastic catharsis. Everything in Deathwatch is more powerful than anything previous versions of the game have ever seen. The Astartes bolter was so powerful they had to nerf it in the early errata because it was better than the plasma and the multi-guns, which just wasn't right. This is the basic bolter for a Space Marine. That was about the same damage as a heavy bolter for a rogue trader. Then, just for building a Marine, first off you get all the Space Marine stock abilities, and there's a ton of them. There were so many, the character sheet includes a cheat sheet so you don't forget you can spit acid, that you gain new skills from cannibalizing dead enemies. You can enter suspended animation, you gain resistances to drowning, poisons and toxins, and a dozen other abilities that make you immensely powerful before you've rolled a single die to generate a characteristic. For the stats, you get all the normal abilities from the other 40k RPGs. However, you do start with a much higher stat than Rogue Traders, the next highest tier level on the 40k RPG ladder. You also gain superhuman strength and toughness. Then you put on the power armor and they go up even higher. Your starting equipment would be enough to solo most adventures built for Dark Heresy or Rogue Trader, only there's a whole party of you. When dealing with large numbers of mooks, you don't roll to see if you hit, you roll to see what percentage of them you kill. Welcome to the top of the food chain. Building a character is fairly simple. Roll 2d10 for every stat, add them together, assign them where you want, and add 30 to every roll. On average, you're going to have double the stats of a regular human. You get a ton of bonus skills and abilities as you are playing an experienced Marine, not some fresh out of the scout training acolyte. Then you pick your chapter from the 6 in the main book, or grab any of the other chapters from the future expansions. The chapter you pick gives you even more abilities. Select your specialty from Tactical, Devastator, Assault, Librarian, Tech Marine, or Apothecary. Those give you more abilities. Then finally add the Deathwatch template, and those give you more abilities. So when you're finished adding all your bonuses, you are one of the Emperor's Angels of Death. The basic concept of Deathwatch Marines is you are a mix of various chapters that have been seconded to work for the Inquisition to put down the threats of the filthy xenos. Everyone gets their armor painted black except for your chapter badges, and now you're working for the Inquisition. Doesn't matter what chapter you work for, be it the uppity Ultramarines, the whiny Blood Angels, uptight Dark Angels, Viking Frat Boy Space Wolves, or if you look on some of the Deathwatch fan sites, you can take chapters like the Archaeotect Obsessed Scions of Ganymede, the vehicular-based chapter, the Steel Dragoons, or the brave but extremely dangerous Screaming Geckos. And yes, those were actually a chapter. It was an April Fool's Day story in a very old White Dwarf, but they have rules in Deathwatch on some fan sites. Somewhere. Once you've assembled your team, they send you out to investigate filthy xenos. By investigate, they mean shoot a lot and find their plans somewhere on the Jackson Pollock hamburger casserole that once was their body. Deathwatch has been criticized for not being very role-playing heavy, but you're playing a genetically designed killing machine that knows no fear, shows no mercy, and accepts no surrender. If you're not power gaming in Adeptus Astartes, you're not trying hard enough. More than any other 40k RPG, Deathwatch is about combat. You start off as one of the most powerful possible characters in any of the 40k RPG lines, and then you add skills and abilities. Buck naked, you shrug off small arms fire. While rogue traders have to search for their best quality bolt pistol and Dark Heresy acolytes can only dream of them, those are your starting weapons, the ones you upgrade from. Then you get grenades that start blowing acolytes to shreds. With the right gear you can fist fight armored vehicles and win. Most of the adventures is searching for the bad guys and then killing them, and the faster you search, the sooner you get to the good part, which is killing them. Speaking about the combat of Deathwatch, your players are going to get bored because they are so good. They aim to shoot with their bolter and the target turns into an overpressurized sausage. Remember, bolter shells explode from the inside of the target. So your players are going to ramp up the difficulty all by themselves. I'm talking about charging into melee combat with hundreds of Hormigans armed only with frag grenades, and unlimited grenades are just a single requisition point. I've seen players force-feed Hive Tyrants Meltabombs, suplex Lictors, or use his combat knife to field dress a Tau Ethereal like he was a deer in the middle of a firefight. And you know what? My players had a blast. because the threat of death wasn't lingering over them like previous 40k games, so they got to cut loose. Most games, everybody starts off trying to play their favorite chapter as close as possible to the lore. 3 games later, they're trying to recreate their favorite Mortal Kombat fatality on the Orc War Boss. The setting for Deathwatch is the Jericho Reach. It's a section of space that has just opened up after centuries of horrific warp storms. The region was reached by using a warp gate that lets the Imperium of Man's vast numbers of ships and troops into a region untouched by their armies or their missionaries. Initially, the conquest was going swimmingly, but unfortunately the Crusade hit a wall when the leader of the Crusade was lost to the warp. Then the filthy xenos started counterattacking, as well as Chaos Traders. Now the Crusade is tied up fighting Tyranids, Tau, and Chaos, while the leadership of the Crusade ranges from desperate to insane. This is where the Space Marines find themselves, torn between doing their jobs and dealing with the squabbling politics of the Imperial commanders. Just because Commander Ebengrave is standing in your way while you are dealing with those filthy xenos, you can't just squash his head like a cherry tomato between your thumb and forefinger, even if you totally could, at level 1. The game itself is open to all sorts of ways to play it. If you want to play an entire team of uptype Dark Angels searching for their fallen, easily done. Take the Deathwatch out of this sector, put it anywhere else you want to keep it fighting. You can overlap this game with only war, with only some slight modifications. All you have to do to make this a chapter-specific game is to remove the Deathwatch skill chart from the start. This game is great for one-shot adventures. Here's your enemy, here's your war gear, go make the Emperor proud. Those are half the adventures right there. Missions can be as complicated as investigate and remove the Alpha Legion influence on this war zone. To see that Hive Tyrant over there? He's annoying my dog. Remove him. One caveat, though. Deathwatch does not do crossovers very well. It doesn't matter if you want to cross over a Space Marine with your Dark Heresy investigation, or you have a Space Marine on your Rogue Trader vessel helping you out. Marines are overpowered killing machines. Inside their own system, it's not a problem because there's a lot of overpowered stuff that they're trying to kill. But in Dark Heresy, you're going to have a hard time finding villains that can threaten a Space Marine. Rogue Traders might be the second most powerful characters in the 40k RPG, but remember, it's a really steep drop after number 1. There are a ton of background books for Deathwatch. If you're a 40k fan, you're going to want all of them for the fluff alone. Each of these books is made with an insane amount of art and detail. Several of the books are about new Space Marine chapters, including the rest of the founding chapters and first founding, new equipment and specializations, as well as the Imperial Fists and Rites of Battle, and a book detailing little-known Space Marine chapters in honor of the chapter, including a chapter generation chart. There's several books detailing the various planets in the war zone itself, as well as a book on the filthy xenos, including one on the Necrons. Bear in mind what constitutes a difficult challenge for Astartes is a TPK in every other game. So be warned, there are things that can hurt a Space Marine, but the Astartes can hurt them back just as easily. You do have to level up to get your better skills and abilities, and you also have to earn reputation points to gain better gear. The Tech Marine isn't going to give you a melt-a-gun if you ask nicely. You've got to impress him enough that he decides that you're worthy. Because of this, there's a lot of daring deeds that will be attempted in Deathwatch to gain the favor of your battle brothers and earn the respect of the people that give you better gear or specific missions. This causes a lot of good-natured one-upmanships. It also gets people trying to solo Orc War Bosses and Tyranid Carnifexes for extra honor. That's probably the most common way you end up rolling a new character. If you want to start collecting Deathwatch, get that stimulus check ready because these books are in great demand. They weren't cheap to begin with, and with Fantasy Flight Games losing the 40k license, the prices have gone up 50% or more on the second-hand market. The problem is Deathwatch is a very well-written and very well-designed game. People love these books, and that makes a full set cost nearly $1,000 easily. Aside from just the adventure books, these books are going to reach up to about $100 on eBay and Amazon, and a lot more because some people think they're made out of gold, obviously. You just have to be careful and patient and keep an eye out for the ones that get put up on auction and hope you can snag them for a cheap price. And cheap is probably anything under $75. Now, having heaped all the praise on Deathwatch, let me add this. Deathwatch isn't for everyone. It's a very one-note game. But if you just want to cut loose with a nigh unstoppable killing machine, if just for an evening, and not worry too much about making friends with filthy xenos, the game has a charm to it. Deathwatch games tend to be light-hearted fun because there are numerous rules exploits that add to the overall carnage. Normally this is a bad thing for RPGs, but for Space Marines it's actually a mark of honor to kill someone in such a way that people talk about the brutality of the death for decades or centuries. Seriously, there's a point system. Next time on Mad Musings, I'm going to go to the bottom of the 40k power scale with the first of the 40k RPGs, Dark Heresy, both 1st and 2nd edition. It was a wonderfully written game that captured low-level grimdark darkness, though the 1st edition rules strained under their own weight, while the 2nd edition cleaned up the rules immensely, but it didn't have time to establish the expansive setting that 1st edition did almost perfectly.